I am also an ambassador of this PM Night group. I'm joined here today by Anna Pernoceva, who is our other co-host, and by Johanna Kelble. Both are all PM Nights ambassador. I think
Hi to all of you.
Only few people that don't have the webcam off are part of either the co-host team or the guest. We're very excited to have you here today. We appreciate you taking the time, especially, amid the craziness in the world right now and the start of the lockdown easing. For the panel today, we have two awesome product managers joining us, including Ruth Wood, product marketing manager at Beekeeper, a Zurich startup providing a digital workplace app. And we have Arjun Muralidharan, a product manager at GetYourGuide, a Berlin startup providing a personal experience marketplace for travelers. So today's event will be broken into three main parts. First, we'll do a few intros about the PMF in general, about the PM Nights group, and also we will have the panelists introduce themselves. Next is the panel itself, which includes a total of 9 questions covering 3 main topics. The 3 main topics are all about COVID-19. The first one is, how did COVID-19 affect your product? Then, how did COVID-19 affect your team? And then, looking at the longer perspective, how has COVID-19 affected product management in general? Lastly, the third part, we'll have an open Q&A session. To submit your questions, there is a Slido group. Anna will sort through the questions and help me relay them to the panel. Please, Anna, if you can share the link of the Slido group in the chat again of Zoom, then everybody can post questions there. Should you prefer to pose your questions directly in the chat of the Zoom, that's also fine, but we will then consolidate them and walk through the questions directly in Slido. If you have any other questions during this panel, please use the chat. We have Anna and Johanna who will patrol and help you if you need help. Also, as a reminder, but everybody is very diligent so far, please keep yourselves muted. If you want to turn on your webcam, please feel free to do so. It's always nicer to see who we're talking to, but it's not a must, you don't have to do it. So to get started, I'd love to share some background about our group. The group here is the Product Management Nights in Zurich, and we are a local group created by the Product Management Festival organization, also known as PMF. PMF is a global organization, and there are hundreds of events like this one today all around the world. PMF, the mother organization, started back in 2012 and is dedicated to global support of development and product managers in all industries, and strives to amplify the impact of product management with the goal of helping both product managers in being more successful and influential, adding real value to their organization. That's the mission of the Product Management Festival, and to achieve that mission, they have more and more products added to their portfolio. You may have already filled in a survey, the Trend and Benchmark. That's a report about product management in general, a yearly one based on surveys and shared with all product managers. Then we have the main conferences. There are 2, one in Singapore and the main one in Zurich in November. We have the PMEP, so the Product Management Executive Program, which is a course directed towards executives. This is provided by the INSEAD Institute in Paris. And I attend that program myself, so if you have any questions about it, feel free to contact me. And I think you will post my LinkedIn profile directly in the chat. And we have now added this program, the PMEP, to other locations as well. It used to be only Paris. We will have it in Singapore and in the US as well. Then we have exit circles that are kind of closed meetup, VIP or invite-only meetups happening in different cities in Europe and around the world. And the PM Nights that I mentioned before, which are now in the remote working times turned into lunch events to make it easier for you to join. About the main event, so the conference, we have a discount code for you. So if you want to join the conference in November in Zurich, you can use this discount code here that you see on the screen. It will be shared again in the chat by Anna. So next up, we're going to have the panelists introduce themselves and share a little bit about their background. And if that's okay with you, Ruth, we'd like to start with you.
Yeah, absolutely, that's fine. So hi everyone, my name is Ruth Wood. I'm a product marketing manager at Beekeeper. I've been at Beekeeper for a couple of years now, and we're a Zurich born and bred B2B SaaS platform, providing secure internal communications and process optimization for frontline industries. So this is really interesting in a COVID context. We'll go into this in a bit, but we are primarily active across retail, manufacturing, logistics, healthcare, and we are the single point of contact for people, tools, and processes on the front line in these industries. Thank you very much. I'm excited to speak to you all today about how we've reacted to this crisis.
Thank you. Likewise, we're quite excited. Thank you very much. Arjun?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm Arjun. I have been with GetYourGuide since beginning of this year. In one of our Zurich teams, GetYourGuide is based in Berlin, and we are a leading platform for travel experiences, things like guided tours, day trips, attraction tickets. My personal background is in banking. I moved to the travel industry with my move to GetYourGuide. So I'm super excited to talk to you about the experiences so far today. I'm glad to be here.
Great, thank you very much. So we have two really awesome panelists today. And what is also very interesting is that they are from two companies that were affected in very different ways by COVID-19, which we'll learn now once we dive into the main panel discussion. So before we do that, I just want to show you this last slide. The program once more. Now we start with the panel discussion, and we will have 10 or 15 minutes for the questions at the end. All right, so let's dive in. The first question that we have is about the effect of the COVID-19 on your product. And as a specifically, we would like to understand how has the pandemic impacted your industry in general. So Ruth, would you like to get started?
Yeah, sure. So I would say B2B SaaS tech in general has not been too badly affected by the crisis. As an industry, we work largely online. Our products are online. For us, it was very easy to transfer within a day to entirely working from home office. And our product itself serves the needs of the companies that have been most impacted by the pandemic. So we've actually experienced higher demand than usual. We've had a few very, very busy weeks, and we've had to learn a lot in the process about how we can optimize our product to best serve the needs of our customers.
Yeah, I can totally imagine. It's like having a marketing campaign on steroids. Suddenly everything changes so fast that you have to adapt to it.
It all happened extremely fast for us. Like in the space of about a week, you know, we were looking at the data. You see certain spikes happening in Italy, in Germany, in Belgium, in the US, the UK. You know, it's been this process of learning from our customers and adapting to that. So I'll go into more detail about that later. But it's been a very, very busy time.
Arjun, I imagine for you it was also quite busy, but maybe the impact was a bit different for you.
Absolutely, and I think it's important that we recognize that what we're facing is an unprecedented crisis for of course the world in general, but specifically for the travel industry. And it's important that we recognize that this disease has taken a real human toll on people, right? So we notice that impact quite directly. Travel has reduced basically to nothing in the past couple of weeks. And we feel that you know, travelers are unable to travel even though they want to, and on the other hand, our network of suppliers and tour operators are obviously facing the same struggle. Many of them small and medium-sized businesses are facing really challenging times. So for the travel industry in general, we're looking for ways to best navigate the situation in the upcoming months, and then probably for the rest of this year and most of next year as well.
Yeah, very good. So you mentioned that travel has been reduced to zero, and I'll then switch to the second question, likely with you first, Arjun. how has this situation actually affected the needs and experience of your customers? How has COVID-19 affected the needs and experience of your customers?
Sure. So first and foremost, it's important that the way we look at it is we have an active role to play in being there for our travelers and being there for the community of suppliers, tour operators, and help them in these times. So on the one hand, if you look at travelers, the number one thing that travelers need right now is reassurance and flexibility. So we've done a lot of work around making sure that travelers can cancel and reschedule their bookings to later times, that they get the information that they need. We're working hard to make sure that we inform travelers of what is open, what is closed. There's a lot of uncertainty in travel right now, or at least in the initial stages of the crisis when things started shutting down. It was very unclear, where can I still go? Where can I not go anymore? Is my ticket still valid? That kind of thing. And we're looking to support our travelers as best as we can. And on the other side of where we have suppliers and specifically tour guides, tour operators, attraction sites, we're making sure that we support them as good. And concretely, that means being helpful in making sure they receive the money that they have due, that they still get paid for whatever is still being booked, and making sure that they have information on how to receive assistance. So we recently launched a blog that helps travel operators and suppliers to information they need to receive government assistance, as an example. And we just continue to be there for you need to understand, in many cases, for many of our suppliers, GetYourGuide has been the primary way to sell their product. And in that sense, our message to them has always been that we are still around. It's business as usual in terms of our operational stability. And we're here to help our suppliers.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I can totally see how communication became very important, especially during the first phase of what was happening. And Ruth, for you, when we look at your industry, how has the situation affected the needs of your customers and their experiences in general?
Yeah, I find this a really interesting question because we serve a lot of different industries. So basically, a lot of our customers, the only way that we differentiate, so the customers that we target, hospitality, travel, entertainment, retail, food retail, manufacturing, logistics, utilities, construction, you name it. There's a lot there. And what we've seen since the start of the pandemic is just spikes in all directions. You know, you look into the data of the product and it's like up, down, all over the place. You see hospitality, travel, entertainment. There's a slight dip. A lot of employees in these industries have been furloughed. What we found is that these employees are still checking in on the Beekeeper app almost daily, looking for updates in their situation, still expecting communication from their employers. So in these industries that have largely stopped from a customer-facing perspective, their employees, their furloughed employees, still have this huge need for clear and transparent communication throughout this crisis. So that's what we've seen there. Moving across into food retail, they have had a need to onboard a ton of new employees. We've also had to support them with that. The need to make sure the supply chain is running much faster, that messages are being able to be exchanged between different parts of the business a lot quicker. This focus on productivity, on operations. So there are very, very different use cases happening there. Manufacturing, logistics, utilities. These are the frontline industries that have really kept going through this whole crisis. And they've had to make sure that they are optimizing their health and safety protocols, and they've been communicating that via Beekeeper. So this is the kind of reaction that we've seen in terms of how our customers are responding to this. From our perspective as a product team, it's forced us to get a lot more vertical specific. It's forced us to get a lot more tactical actually in how we are serving this market and identifying these use cases and learning from our customers throughout this pandemic. You know, you look into, we've been working very closely with our customer success team to just understand a little bit more about what these best practices are. that are developing in all of these different companies at the same time, and make sure that these best practices are made clearer and more accessible. Like if a certain company is handling things in a really, really good way, then other people in their industry should be able to know about this, to benefit from it, to recreate it for themselves. So this has been the challenge that we've been trying to adapt to over the past few weeks.
Yeah, quite challenging. Yeah, I can see that. It seems that something that you both had in common was the fact that suddenly there was a lot of information coming in and you had to see through that information. Customer success, customer support became very important. And then you had to adjust somehow what you were delivering. And that's actually the next question I have. Like, how did you then adjust based on what you have learned, what you have heard from the market, from your teams? How did you adjust the delivery or the execution of your products? And Ruth, maybe we can start with you. How did you react actually to all these signals coming in?
Yeah, of course. So around the start of March, we started noticing these signals coming in. We started working with CS to identify what these use cases were, what this best practice was. And, you know, I think we were all in the same position back then, kind of not really knowing how large of an event coronavirus was going to be on a global scale. And internally, you know, it was this decision between, okay, is this a tactical marketing campaign, or is this a change in the direction of our product? What is this going to be? What scope is this for us? And the way that we chose to react to it was to ensure that best practices are accessible to our customers. So work with CS and work with marketing to be running webinars for various industries about how to communicate with furloughed employees best and how to adapt your business, productivity, agility in crisis times, this kind of thing, kind of keep the resilience and keep the business running. Then on the product side, we brought together this team of cross-functional experts from lots of different teams internally to identify the value-adding use cases, look at what we had in our product currently, look at what we had short-term, near-term on the roadmap that we could also use to support those use cases, and put together a free product package of these premium features and these use cases and templates that could help tangibly for these best practices to become far more widespread. And then we aligned that with a marketing campaign that was running at the time and made that available to any customers that might want it. So far, the response has been pretty good. So it was definitely a really good learning experience for us. You know, we made this happen as a product team within a week, from identification of the use cases and just looking at feasibility of whether we could make that happen as a product package. This is also the first time Beekeeper has ever put out a package of such, you know, of such a magnitude, with features, with templates, with use cases. Mm-hmm. So there was like a couple of days of planning, and then we had this massive planning sheet, and we had daily meetings, day by day, with the whole team, just like, okay, item by item, where do we stand? What are we doing? How can we automate this? How can we template this? How can we make it accessible for more people? How can we make it faster to set up, easier for us? And I'm really proud with what we came up with there. Yeah. So we were able to use this COVID package. Yeah.
It's quite impressive, I must say, because Beekeeper is at the front line. You are an app that helps companies that were quite badly affected by the situation to communicate. Mm-hmm. And you could have actually missed that opportunity, right? But what you did, the way you describe it, is that you came up with a plan to actually react in a very positive way, and you delivered a product package that actually helped companies to go through the situation in an easier way. So yeah, kudos. I think that was a very good fast reaction within a week. You even said, very impressive. Arjun, for you, how did you have like a similar way of approaching that? Like suddenly you saw like a lot of changes and you had to react to that. How did you approach actually like this side of things on the delivery and execution of your product based on what you had as signals from your support team, from what you could read and the signals and APIs you were looking at?
Absolutely, it's interesting to hear. So many of the reactionary or the effects are quite similar to what Ruth mentioned. We did have these signals in late February, March, where bookings started declining massively and cancellations started rising as travel restrictions were put in place. So the initial response and a near-term adjustment to delivery was to make sure that travelers get the right information on time around their trip being canceled or their activity being canceled, and making sure that that experience is as smooth as possible. You can imagine, and I can tell from personal experience, I had to, as many of us probably had to cancel vacations or other trips. You need to deal with flights, you need to deal with hotels, you need to deal with any other kind of reservations that you made, and we didn't want to be an additional contributor to that frustration. So one of the key things we did is we rolled out a very I'd say friendly cancellation policy for customers, so it was easy for any customer to get their money back on any activity, regardless of what the cancellation policy was when they booked. That was, I think, a key initial decision that we made, and we went further than that when we realized that. In addition to just giving customers their money back, one of the things we could do is make sure that when the travel picks up again, that customers can come back and book again. So one of the things that we did is we decided, and this was similar situation like with Ruth. We had a couple of executives on a call on a Friday evening deciding that we want to roll out a refund policy where customers can choose to either get their money back as usual, or they can opt to get a gift code with an extra 10% as a gift from GetYourGuide to the travel community to then book again at a later point in time within the next couple of years. And so that meeting took place on a Friday evening. Monday and Tuesday, we had all the developers and designers and myself on a standing Zoom call for basically the next 20 hours. And we shipped that functionality and we rolled it out, and the response has been quite incredible. So customers want to travel. We see that there is a hunger to get out there again. And this has helped both customers to get a little bit or relieve the frustration and get a little bit back in terms of a little bit more to spend on their next trip. And at the same time, it's of course helped us preserve some of the customer base going forward. So that's probably one of the responses that I was most closely involved in across the company. There have been similar efforts to make sure that, for example, we launched a number of virtual experiences for free on YouTube. You can do a watercolor painting class on YouTube. We had a virtual tour of the Duomo in Milan. And those are just initial forays for us where we wanted to give back to the community as good as we could during this situation.
Great. Yeah, so very creative solutions, impressive in both cases, especially the speed of delivery. I find it quite interesting to see how fast this external threat changed the way that the teams were working and the delivery speed that we had. There is this joke running on, you probably all seen it, that the major digital innovation factor in companies in general was actually COVID-19, with all the remote working and the Zoom calls and so on. And that definitely added to the speed of delivery of companies in general. So if we look at now a little bit beyond that, Arjun, you mentioned that you have this refund policy, or you can have this 10% that you can use as a discount on your next order and so on. So you already have some aspects of my next question covered there, but I would like to hear a bit more from you. Have you had to change your product roadmap and strategy in general because of COVID-19, and how did you approach that?
Yeah, I think what's important to recognize is when we're usually a quite data-driven and data-informed company in the way we make decisions and in the way we build products. And when your traffic drops, then obviously you have a lot less data to work with. So it's one of the challenges has definitely been that data is scarce, and we've had to look at we had to invest a lot more in doing some research apart from just looking at our usual metrics to figure out where we're going in the future. And I think what I can say is that our mission has always been to make sure travelers can find incredible experiences that they can share with their loved ones, and that will continue to be the case. It'll just look a bit different. And what I mean by that is when travel picks up again, we expect that it will come back in stages, probably more on a regional level, and we want to help travelers find those experiences more easily. So if you're going to, instead of going on a 10-hour flight across the world, if you're going to look in your backyard, can we make it easier for travelers to find those experiences right in their backyard? We might also move more on on looking at what travelers need when they come when travel comes back. We know for a fact that flight travel might become more expensive if it becomes more restrictive. We know it'll be at a premium. So based on that, we are making adjustments to the product strategy and roadmap as we speak to address those new needs.
Mm-hmm.
I think what's important also to recognize is that we are in a position, thankfully, that we are in a financially strong position. So we will survive this crisis, and we're using the time to invest heavily in our technical platform as well. The beauty of having less traffic is that risk is much lower when you make large technical changes. So we are being more aggressive and moving much faster on those fronts, so that when the traffic returns, travelers can expect a higher speed of new features, new functionality, and they can expect generally more execution from us and less focus on our tech platform, which has been, I would say, one of the adjustments that has come out of the crisis. And to finish on that point, if you look forward, we are forecasting as we go. I think it's extremely uncertain for anyone to say how the travel industry will look even in 3 months' time, let alone in 6 months' time. So we are constantly monitoring and seeing where travel demand will pick up again, and accordingly we adjust what we do on our marketplace with regards to that demand.
Yeah, awesome, thank you. Also, Ruth, smiling when you said that you were also focusing on the technical debt. I'm looking forward to hear the view on of Beekeeper on that question. So how did you have to change your product strategy and roadmap, Ruth, at your company?
Yeah, I would say as a result of the pandemic, we haven't adapted our product roadmap as such. We definitely put a few engineers together into a group who, at the time that everything was, all the spikes were happening, they were just tasked with keeping the platform running and scaling to reach the increased demand. And they've done that extremely well and extremely fast. It was amazing to see that teamwork from them. Regarding product strategy and product roadmap, I'm in an interesting position here as product marketing, because I sit at this intersection between product and marketing and sales, kind of enabling everybody there, and also the CS. What we can do with our current roadmap, so we haven't adapted the Q2 roadmap, for example, according to the crisis, but what we need to do here is be a lot more tactical with how we release that and how we announce it. Because we can't just come up with, we've made some improvements to our translations. Everyone's just going to be like, okay, great, don't care, give us something pandemic specific. So we've had to come up with ways of aligning that with what's tactically going on, with what's going on in the markets, what customers really need, coming up with the right kind of messaging there. Also, from a product perspective and from a whole company perspective right now, it's more about, it's more about riding the wave. So we used to always get this question from prospects about whether Beekeeper is a nice to have or a must have, and how we can prove that we're a must have. I think after this crisis, we will never need to answer that question again. And this has come at exactly the right time, as we're also iterating on our value proposition.
Yeah.
So we are actively learning from our customers right now that we are a must-have, that we can support in situations like this, that we are like the only point of contact and the single point of contact for the front line, and that yes, that is necessary for situations exactly like this one. It's also allowed us to move into slightly new verticals for us. So we had previously a couple of customers in healthcare. This is massively expanded through the crisis. We've got a lot of new hospitals on board, senior care living facilities across the board. So in the US, in Switzerland, in Germany, and we're having to adapt a little bit more to that vertical right now. That's been really interesting. And as a product team, what we've learned is that it is entirely possible for us to be agile enough to support widespread industry best practice fast with our tool. Like in the space of a week, like you see some customers doing some great stuff with the product, you're like, great, let's make it a template, let's make it available to everybody.
Yeah.
That's been the real learning for us.
Yeah.
And that's something that I'd like to repeat at some point in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, these iteration cycles are very, very short now when you observe something and you try to adapt to it and you have a response very fast. Cool. If I can just add an extra question to you, Ruth. You said that you are now iterating on the value proposition that you have. Is that something that you already planned to do before the COVID and it was like accelerated somehow, or was that a realization that happened during this phase?
No, it's something that was already kind of being worked on at the higher levels in Q1. And it's just so happened to align timing-wise pretty much perfectly with what's happened over the past few weeks. Of course, this has meant that we adapt it slightly. So previously, we weren't targeting so much business agility, but I think what we've learned through the crisis is that Beekeeper is able to support customers to be far more agile in the face of changing climates, changing regulations, changing protocols. And this is going to be a big part of what we're running with going forward. So business agility and business resilience, particularly in the face of changing circumstances, that's going to be a core part of what we're about now. And I think that ideally helps us to answer this question of whether we are a nice to have or a must have, because when change is the only constant, you need to ensure that your business can be agile, especially when you've got majority frontline workforce who don't even have email addresses. You need some way to reach those people to make stuff happen fast, to mobilize that workforce. And what we've learned is that Beekeeper is that tool. And
awesome.
that's been, yeah.
Great, thank you, Ruth. I'd like to move to the next topic that we have today. So the second round of questions, it's about the team. So we're looking at the product and how you iterated and reacted to the new inputs from the market. But now I would like to start with you, Arjun. How did this new situation, so with the work from home measures that we had, remote office and so on, how did that impact day-to-day life? And let's start with Arjun from GetYourGuide.
Sure. So GetYourGuide decided to move into work from home mode across the company quite early. It was the second week of March, and we've been in that mode ever since. And I think for my team specifically, the way we work, at its core, not that much has changed. We are still able to do everything we do, being a company working on a digital product. What has changed, though, is for sure two things. One is, since we are a company that's mainly driven out of Berlin with an office in Zurich, which is tech and product heavy, and of course a number of sales offices around the world. The current crisis has been kind of an equalizer for us, because it doesn't matter anymore where you're sitting. If you join a meeting, everyone's kind of joining from the way we are joining it now, right? So if something that we, from a Zurich perspective, can appreciate is that now we are not one Zurich person joining a meeting room with 5 people in Berlin, but rather 5 people joining the same meeting on kind of a more equal footing, if you will. Mm-hmm. It's small things like that are surprising, what kind of effect that can have. And it's interesting when Berlin colleagues then tell me, oh, I didn't know how difficult you guys had it in Zurich until I had to experience this myself, right? So that's those are small details. What's definitely harder is, and that's the second thing, is while I guess from an engineering perspective, a lot of our engineers appreciate the fact that there are much fewer distractions, that there's much more focus on their work, and they're able to execute. On the flip side, from a product side, you obviously have a lot less opportunity to ideate, to stand at a whiteboard, to have informal conversations, to generate friction where something new might come out of, and streamlining everything into Zoom calls removes that opportunity. Mm-hmm. And I think the key takeaway is that while there are a lot of benefits to this working mode, and we will come to learn about those benefits and recognize those benefits in the future, I still firmly believe that nothing can beat the face-to-face conversation in the office, and that helps us bring the product forward. One thing that we did realize when we shipped the feature that I spoke about a bit earlier around having refunds is that if you're going to work in a, let's say, war room mode on a specific feature, the only way we could make it work is having a standing Zoom call throughout the course of 2 days. And if we were in an office setting, we might have been able to execute a bit faster, or at least with you know, a little bit of a quicker turnaround on individual questions. So all in all, the mode, the working mode on a content level hasn't changed that much, of course, with adjustments to the market. I'm really looking forward to getting back to the office at some point in the future.
Okay. Do you think we will go back to the situation before COVID, or do you think it's going to change? Like it's going to be like a mix, more remote, but still when necessary in a meeting, or how would you balance those models?
So I think we strongly believe that the mode before COVID was pretty good. I mean, we were executing well. We had really good growth. I think some of the benefits from this mode we can adapt into the office. So I think you know, things like it makes you very mindful of certain things like distractions and how you structure your work day. And that's open, to be honest, from a company perspective, how we will deal with that. We know for a fact that the way regulations are being discussed in Germany, that, you know, a full return to an office is right now not on the cards in any time near the near future.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have to see. We will probably be more forced into it than do it voluntarily, because I think our culture is quite strong around being face to face, working together. But I think we've learned to deal with the other situation better. So if someone is working from home occasionally, we're just much better at doing it now than we were pre-COVID.
Got it. Great. Yeah. Thank you. Ruth, how about in your team? How did that impact the product team at Beekeeper?
Yeah, very similar to Arjun, actually, I have to say. Beekeeper was already very remote friendly because we've got offices in Zurich, in Berlin, in Oakland, California, in Krakow, Poland. So we have to make sure that a lot of our meetings are very open to remote participants. So we were able to move from working in the office to entirely working at home in the space of a day with minimal disruption, I would say. In terms of the product teams, each product and engineering team, we call them swarms because bees, each of the swarms has an open Zoom room every day that they can just hang out in. Cool. And interact with each other. So if you need to contact one of those swarms, you can jump into their Zoom room and be like, hi, I have questions. You know, what's going on here? So that's been an interesting way of working, and I think it's worked out pretty well for us. We also suffered a little bit from this lack of close personal contact. So the way that we've dealt with that is having a weekly all hands meeting on a Friday evening, where the American participants get a coffee and the European participants get a beer or other beverage of choice. And we just have a bit more of an informal chat in breakout rooms, and then the CEO presents something motivational to the company, and then we're able to talk about it. And the first one of these was particularly cool because it happened in the first week where like everything was happening, everything was kicking off. We noticed all of this increased demand in the product data, and then in the sales teams, they were, you know, we didn't even have to do outbound again, like for a week because everything was coming to us. And it was amazing, kind of all getting together into that remote Zoom room in that first week that everybody was working from home, and just being able to exchange about everything that we were experiencing and learning. I found that was really good and helped a lot for general camaraderie and motivation in the company.
Did you see any changes in the roles your team had to take in this new setup?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've seen it happen on a couple of levels, right? So I've seen a big increase in very effective cross-functional collaboration in Beekeeper. There are lots of cross-functional teams getting together to work on like making things happen fast. The COVID package was one of these. There was a similar one with a marketing campaign. There have been other ones where other people are getting together to collaborate on webinars, for example. But what I've seen from like a functional perspective is that each of us is getting the space to really focus down on what we do and bring that expertise into that cross-functional setting. So yeah, focus, expertise, and proactivity to just get stuff done together. You know, I've never been able to focus more fully on doing product marketing really well as I have in the past few weeks. I think the same is true for the product managers, the same is true for the engineers. We've got the space to concentrate. We have a little bit more ownership over our time, and we choose where to put that expertise and where to put that time, what we do with our resources. Just have a bit more control over that. And that's been what's come out of it for us.
Sorry to interrupt.
Sorry.
Do you think that has to do with the fact that you work remotely, so you're more focused? When you have a call, it's like very clear what the scope is of the call.
I believe so. So yeah, you know in each meeting exactly what's on the agenda, what's to be discussed. Typically, we aim to finish under time in all of our meetings. And so, you know, you just go in, you discuss that thing, and then you go and work on whatever you need to work on. And it's been, for me, a little bit of an improvement in terms of just how focused I've been able to be with my work. I think the same is true of quite a few other colleagues. They sent out an interesting survey to us this morning, actually, asking about the post-COVID, like when we return to the office, what everybody would want. So are we planning to start working more than one day from home each week? Do we feel that we can work as well at home as we can in the office? It's going to be really interesting to see. I see Julia's comment here, except for some of us with kids. Yes, Julia, I see that. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting seeing the results of that survey, because I know what I feel, but then I can't speak for everybody.
Great, thank you, Ruth. Arjun, did you see changes in the roles your team has had to take during that period?
Yeah, it's very similar to what Ruth said at the beginning. The amount of focus that the team was able to put into certain topics has increased a lot. And that it's not just because of work from home. I would say it's much more because of our business circumstance. If you think about the pre-COVID situation, where we would see hundreds of thousands of people on the platform and thousands of bookings every day, then there's always going to be a certain percentage of your capacity dedicated to just dealing with operational stuff that comes up through the daily business. And teams that GetYourGuide, usually, you know, you build it, you run it, you're responsible for the whole thing within a team. And so some of that has reduced while we still have operational things to take care of. There's been the ability from an engineering perspective to focus on specific topics and get those shipped, and do so in a cross-functional manner. That's been a lot easier. And on a product side, I would say that the role as such hasn't shifted that much at its core, but we're able to take a much more long-term view. So I would say, if you would consider this the halfway point in Switzerland for the crisis, then, which is probably not, it's really optimistic, but if you look at what has happened so far, it has been managing the fallout from the crisis unfolding. But right now, I would say, since a couple of weeks and looking to the next couple of months, it's going to be a lot more about where are we going to place our long-term bets. So from a product perspective, we're taking a long view, and from an engineering perspective, it's less of a long view, but more of a dedicated focus on some strategic stuff that we're building right now. And so that's been really beneficial, that we've been able to make those investments and dedicate that focus for the next few months. So that's what's changed.
Well, and I'll wrap up. I have to accelerate a little bit because we want to have the Q&A session. So as a last question from the planned questions, how do you think, and I think you've already touched that now in your answer, how do you think the world of product management in general has been impacted by COVID? How is that going to impact how we're going to approach product management in general once we get out of this phase?
Should I go first?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, sure. So I think that's extremely industry specific. So for us, the one thing that we do know is that we've learned how to deal with the situation when you don't really have that much data to test new ideas. So it used to be that you could build a feature send it out into the world, and within a couple of days you already know what's happening, because we had a lot of transactions happening on a daily basis. So going forward, I think it's important as product managers that we build confidence in following our own convictions and finding ways to build confidence on sources that are not just the transactional day-to-day data, and finding ways to build on experience and learn from others and learn from other companies, rather than just look at the raw numbers on a day-to-day basis. So I think for a company like us, that's going to be important in the future, that we, while yes, we want to be a data-driven and data-informed company, that cannot be the only source, because in a situation like this, we don't have that luxury anymore.
It's a good wrap-up. Thank you very much. Ruth, would you like also to answer that question?
Yeah, just quickly from my side, I think what we've learned from a product management perspective is that it is possible to move that fast. You know, we can learn from our customers, let our customers lead us, look out for best practice, look out for, you know, the things that are saving lives in this context, and make that more widespread and have a tangible impact with it. And it's possible to do it very, very quickly if you want to make it happen. You just got to get the right people into the room and set a very clear role and a clear goal for that process.
Yeah, great, thank you. So we have a few questions now in Slido, and I think the first one, just to bridge the gap with what you said, Ruth, is probably quite relevant here. So you have been able to react very fast, and that was impressive. But I think the question here is about, did you identify difficulties? Did you face issues with that? So if I read the questions, such a rapid and extensive delivery must have exposed a few difficulties. What were the toughest challenges that you faced, and how did you overcome them?
That is such a good question. I wanted to have space to talk about the challenges that this brought. So thank you to whoever asked this. There were a couple of difficulties that it exposed. So from a technical perspective, it was, you know, you're creating templates for the first time in the product, and then it's how you template those into every single instance of the product that needs it. So every single sales demo tenant and every customer tenant that would want it, and not overwriting information that's already there and all of this, testing that fast enough. That was very difficult for us. We had to create some clear short-term ownership over that process and get someone in who was just primarily focused on making that templater work. And then from on a more holistic level, in terms of teamwork, it definitely would have made sense to get sales operations involved earlier in that process. This is the big learning for me. When you're trying to, you know, you're giving sales this amazing product package, all of these templates that are definitely for sure going to drive value and going to drive leads and all of this. The first question that comes back is going to be, great, okay, how are we pricing it? Okay, 2 months, from when to when? How does it look in Salesforce? Have we got a separate line item for this? What about PandaDoc? Like, what are the disclaimers we need to put in? Blah, 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 all of this. And the mistake we made was not getting ops involved early enough in that process. So all of that had to happen in quite a rush in a couple of days at the end, and apologies were made and learnings were made, and we will not do the same again.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, learning the hard way is still learning, so.
Yeah.
Arjun, there's a question that has been liked a few times here for you. How do you get a grasp of how the supply side feels about starting to offer tours again, even during COVID-19, even locally and respecting safety measures?
Yeah, so maybe a disclaimer, I'm not that close to our suppliers, but I know we have teams that are extremely close, in close collaboration and exchange with our suppliers around the world. And that's really important that we have this proactive communication in both directions, and we've been talking to them daily and learning from them. What are their needs? What is it that they are fearing? And to be honest, the bottom line here, there's really no answer yet. There is so much uncertainty on what the rules are going to be when things slowly move back to a normal mode. We know for a fact that there are going to be restrictions around hygiene standards. There are going to be restrictions around what group sizes you can have. Bottom line at the moment is suppliers want to get back to business. They want to get back to doing what they do best, and that is offer their experiences to travelers. and they're going to do that as soon as they can. And what we can do from a Get Your Guide perspective is help them navigate that and be there when that upswing, when the travel industry picks up again. In terms of how they feel, and I hope I'm answering the question, I think they really don't know as of today. We just want to get back to business, and we will, suppliers will obviously respect what the regulations at the time are. Mm-hmm. I hope that kind of answers it.
Yeah, I guess so. Thank you very much. So I'm just scrolling through the questions here. They haven't been voted so much, so I'm just going to pick one a little bit randomly. Feel free to jump in, Arjun or Ruth, to answer. That one is a short one. What kind of user research methods do you suggest during and after Corona? I guess during is a bit harder, but yeah, during and after. Would you like to take that question in your view?
I can have a shot. I think not that much is going to change. I think, as I mentioned, we do a lot of quantitative analysis on the data. I think we will look for ways to do more quantitative research, user interviews, looking at data published by a number of sources. What's been incredible during this crisis is the amount of data that people have been collecting and publishing, just starting with simple things like the tech companies publishing, smartphone usage stats in certain locations. So I think it's going to be a mix of moving to more qualitative research methods, user interviews, panels, things like that, and investing in other data sources that are maybe not your own data. That's at least our perspective, and that should complement the journey back to when travel normalizes.
Got it. Yeah, thanks a lot. Would you like to add to that, or should I proceed?
Yeah, I mean, regarding user research or finding inspiration for where to take the product and what to do with the product during and after Corona, what I found really useful, and what I know our product managers have found really useful, is a really close collaboration with customer success through this whole process. Like in the company, like they are really on the front line, so it's really getting the qualitative data from them in terms of what people are talking about, what best practices, what people are saying about the product, what people are asking from us, and staying humble in the face of all of that to just serve their needs as they arise.
Yeah, great, thank you. There is a question from Vini Geraldez, and I think, Arjun, you touched that a little bit before, but that's a good question. What are the roles of leadership and teams in decision-making and prioritization for a quick time to market of new ideas? And Arjun, I'm referring to you because you mentioned that you had this call with the management when
Sure.
And so on. So probably the question is for both of you, but yeah, what is your view on that?
Yeah, I think what's important to note is that at Get Your Guide, we are like most, I guess, tech startups. We're very flat in our organization, so we work very closely with the exec team, and I think what we can highlight is that because of the low barrier for communication, so the CPO might pick up the phone and talk to an engineer, or a designer talks to the CMO. It happens all the time, and that said, it's been very useful in making decisions very quickly. I think the way our exec team has handled it, that can of course lead to a lot of cross communication all over the place, but that surprisingly has worked very well within our organization, because we're quite transparent in any decisions that are taken. We have very regular all hands and weekly updates, just as Ruth mentioned, where things are communicated quite transparently. So it's usually, I think a key is that everyone has as much information as possible, and there's a tendency in this phase to over communicate, which is good, and make sure that people may hear the same information twice, which is helpful in making decisions quickly.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Would you like to add something?
Yeah, I would say in terms of the response to the crisis, it happened sort of marketing started running a marketing campaign before the product put together the product package, but it really came from marketing leadership and from product leadership and then the goal was to align them once they were both ready. I mean, the message that came from leadership is like, we should do something. And then it was up to the teams to decide exactly what something looks like.
Great. Yeah. Okay, cool. So I'll wrap up with the last question. It's the third ranked question here. What are 2 words for the new normal in product management after COVID-19? If you have to pick 2 words, who wants to go first?
I'll go. I would say agile and humble would be the 2. So agile in the needs, in the sense of moving fast, adapting fast, and humble in the sense of just listening, being aware of what's going on, serving the need that is there when it needs to be served.
Very wise. Thank you. Arjun, you seem to agree.
Yeah, I'd say empathy and data would be my 2 words. Empathy simply because now more than ever, our core tenet of being completely focused on the customer and the customer needs, be that a traveler or a supplier, will be extremely important in the months to come. And data, because we continue to use data to make our decisions, and we really learn to appreciate the importance of it in this phase, and it's going to be even more important in the future. So I'd close with those 2 words.
Great. So I guess that's a wrap up. Maybe because we have another minute and a half, does anyone wants to share their 2 words? Just unmute and share with us before we call it a day. Don't be shy. I can read some words here.
Andre, you can go ahead. Yeah.
I can. Okay, thank you. So thank you guys. It was really a pleasure to hear you in these challenging times and hear from a smaller companies or more agile companies than the company where I work in at the moment, how you deal with the crisis. Great that in most of these examples, it was possible to continue business. It was possible to continue development, product development. So that was really cool. And also that something that we have learned, all of us, is the way how we can also be sometimes remote and still be efficient, how decision making can still happen when we are remote. So this will, I believe, enable even more remote work in the future, also in product development. So really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. All right. So thank you again to both speakers, Ruth and Arjun. It was a great exchange. Thank you very much. It was super insightful to see how COVID has affected 2 companies in very different and opposite ways. And yeah, I hope we can organize another virtual panel soon. We focused on getting out of the COVID-19 situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.